and there's nothing I could say that would ease the pain of a loss of a child, because we're not supposed to outlive our children.
Absolutely.
It said, when we're born, we start our journey on how to learn how to live. When we're born trying to learn how to live. When we're here, we try to master that. Those that are taken early reach their goal.
Yeah, she did. First she found a church community, and then it was like a year later when we were seriously getting to know each other.
I can't imagine somebody just showing up, and that's, again, that leads me to believe that, again, I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that things are meant to be for a reason.
Sure.
9/11, as tragic as it was, had to happen. And if you think about what you built with your church and what happened after 9/11, the United States became a real, genuine community. I know we've gotten
it's so true, isn't it? I agree 100%.
Yeah. And we've gotten a little far away from it now.
For sure.
Because our memories are very short.
Oh, right.
You remember, you couldn't even buy an American flag back then.
Yeah.
We were never so whole as a country as we were right after 9/11.
And like you as a child, the country has become a little fractured, a little broken now.
Very polarized, divisive. It's sad right now.
And I loved that feeling of community where it didn't matter whether you were black, white, Asian, Spanish, male, female. You walk down the street, hey, how you doing? You okay? Hey, how you doing? And
That's exactly right.
It was
I remember
a real
that.
genuine community.
I think there was something like 90 ethnicities died in the towers, and our church now has 69 different ethnicities. Our goal is that we would hit that 90 one day through our churches in New York City, New Jersey, et cetera. So really amazing that God not only creates, but what's more difficult, Kevin, creation or redemption?
For me, it was redemption.
I think for everybody.
For me, it was redemption.
It's such an uphill battle, but that's what we experience on this side of our disasters and our situations. My first marriage that ended, and then to meet Lynette, we've been married 17 years right now, and she's been the greatest stepmom. She's been an incredible wife. We're madly in love still after 17 years. It sounds like, I might just be embellishing this or whatever, but actually I never really say it like that because it's so hard for some people to believe because they still struggle in relationship. But somehow what I went through in my first marriage and what I went through in my childhood, because everything begins in a family. All the dysfunction that we have usually began, and it's in the family setting, and then it's generationally passed down.
In your molding years, when you're a child, that's when you get molded into the person that you are. And
Absolutely.
You did leave out one chapter in this book, and that's my connection with Pastor Shino Prater. Okay,
Yeah.
so I actually have a connection with him. I meet him for the first time, and he tells me he played for Penn State in '97. Yep. I said, you played for Penn State in '97. You know a guy named Pete Marzak? I went to high school. He's a good friend of mine.
No way.
He's like, yeah, I know Pete. I know Pete real well. And I said, call Pete up. And I'm like, I'm standing here with Shino Prater. You know him? He goes, yeah, no. And so I get them, and I reconnected them. And then I see him occasionally because Shino lives real close to me now. But that's coincidence? Or was it a plan?
Kevin, I'm glad you told me that. So Shino Prater, my son Nathan Lewis, and Kaz Enuma are now the three pastors in our Manhattan congregation. And Adam and Dottie in the New Jersey church. So now two of our congregational leaders. And they are doing an incredible job. It's called Every Nation, New York City, everynationnyc.org. We'll connect you with any of our churches in the region. And we have a lot of things going on around the world, overseas, a lot of different places. But the two that I'm so fond of is what's happening here in New York City, because this came as a result of pain and suffering. Our church was here because of that. I would not be here had it not been for 9/11.
You have repurposed suffering, which is what we do. When we walk somebody through a journey, when they start telling their story, we try to show them that you just don't have to sit in that valley. You can climb that mountain and get to the top again just by taking what you've learned and repurpose it the same way your father did, the same way you did, the same way the people of New York City did after 9/11. We repurposed suffering, we came together, and we created something. So creation can only come out after redemption.
So we say it's absolutely creation, fall, restoration, and then full-blown reconciliation or transformation. And so that is the cycle that we all live through: the creation, the fall, then the redemption, and then the restoration of everything. Everything gets restored.
Looks like God sort of gave up in the middle of creating Mike.
You know,
So
there's
it's
still
like
hope for
half-formed.
Mike, though. There's breath in his lungs. Mike, there's still hope for Mike. Even Mike.
Well, so I
Pastor, don't cater to him, please. Because listen, we're running out of time. Remember, he'll go on for an hour about me now. He's just jealous.
But you know what's
He can't
great
look
about
like this. That's his problem.
It's so funny.
but I Pastor Adam calls me. I don't go out, and I'm not that type of person to say, "Oh, you got to believe in God. You got to believe in God. You got to believe in
Yeah.
God." It's just not me. My journey has led me to the church. I don't talk about it a whole lot on the air, but Pastor Adam calls me a guerrilla minister. All right,
Yeah.
as in guerrilla war.
I got you. Yeah. Right.
Because I'll go out there and I'll steal things from him constantly. Like I steal words from every sermon that he says, and I'll call him up and I'll say, "Hey, PA, I just stole this from you." He goes, "I don't worry about it. I stole it from C.S. Lewis, and I stole it from this person. I stole it from this person." So we're trading this information to get it out to a broader audience. But the way that I show people my path is, I said, "Look, this worked for me. This is how I live my life." And it seems to be feeling really, really good. And I tell people when they say, "Yo, you go to church every week," and I'm not perfect by any means. He'll tell you every day I'm not perfect.
Oh, he already warned me.
Yeah. But I say when I leave, I feel better. And that's the bottom line, right? Whether you believe or whether you don't believe, whatever you do in life, after you leave that experience, did it make you feel better or did it make you feel worse? People can say that with drugs. George Carlin had this great interview once where he said, the first time you do a drug, it's probably 90% joy or 90% happiness. I try not to use that word joy. I'll get to that in a minute. Mm-hmm. It's probably 90% happiness and 10% pain, coming down off it, whatever it may be. But as time moves on, you see that statistics start to change, where at the end, when you're full-blown addict, it's usually 90% pain, sometimes 100% pain,
right,
and no joy. So every experience I walk out of now, if it doesn't end in joy and it becomes more pain than joy, it's time to move on.
What's the sense of doing it?
Yeah, it's time to move on. I love going to the gym. It's always been almost 100% joy to me. And the day that it doesn't become joy to me, I'll walk away. But those are the things that are unshakable. I talk often about primary identity, that unshakable thing, and we see this a lot as cops. So a lot of police officers we see, they take that career in law enforcement and they make it their primary identity. That's who they are. And then what happens? That career ends, like ours ended. And now you're left out in the darkness going, what do I do now?
Right.
What do I do now?
Or you have guys that are staying too long because that's their identity.
Correct. Because that's all they are. And it's the wrong thing to do. Your primary identity needs to be something that's unshakable, unchangeable. And if you find that, you can still be everything underneath, but that's not your identity because it's going to go away.
Kevin, you're sounding like a pastor, man.
You don't want me teaching your congregation.
You just ripped off all of Adam's stuff. And
I
he's
just
influenced
steal
you.
everything.
Listen, that's all he's doing. Adam gave that sermon probably 2 weeks ago. So
Adam gave that sermon, I'm going to say more than that, probably 6 months ago. But yes, I did steal it from him.
How much time do we have left?
Looks like we're got about 12 minutes, and we got to
So-
get into Miracles in Manhattan. So
Well, let me just mention this, that the worst time of my life was watching my third son, Jordan. I have 4 sons, Nathan, Christian, Jordan, John Luke, great kids. Jordan was incredibly special, born 1990 in North Carolina on a cloudless day with a rainbow on it. He was born, and I thought, this kid is incredibly special. And he was very quiet, very shy, but very strong in every way, physically, but mostly emotionally, spiritually, very, very solid. And of all my kids, and he became the one who was walking that straight as an arrow line. And I don't know how you do that. It wasn't
kid,
my
no.
story. Wasn't my story. But he was solid, and he lived an incredible life. And when he was in college, he went on a mission trip to Tanzania. into a place that was very, very, very dangerous and risky for a lot of reasons. And they suffered so many different attacks and things like that that they had to endure. They built a birthing clinic. And at the end of it, the team leader said, all right, who wants to go in and share the good news, the gospel? Who wants to go into the tribe there and share? And he raised his hand and said, send me. So he went in with one other kid, and all of a sudden people began responding to the gospel. This is a tribe of 161,000 people, and they had never, there's none of the three B's, no body of Christ, no believer, and no Bibles. And then all of a sudden things begin to change. He comes back and he started telling me the news of everything that happened, because they started a church in the birthing clinic they helped build. And he started telling me the whole story, and I was just blown away. This quiet, shy kid is all of a sudden just doing this kind of stuff. I can't even believe it. I mean, the story was unbelievable. I mean, elephant stampedes, killer wasp attacks. I mean,
everything
black
kills you out there.
mambas.
Yeah.
I mean,
Everything
all this
kills you out
stuff
there.
was going on. Cars turning over. Somehow all those, it was like 10 men, and 10 young men, and they all survived, did great. He comes back, he's telling me a story. He said, I had 2 or 3 nosebleeds every day. I said, well, we should go check that out. Went, checked it out. They thought it was some sort of a fungus or something like that, and they started looking deeper. MRI, they found that there was a tumor, a cancerous tumor the size of a tangerine in the back of his skull, wrapped around both optic nerves, and we had to get him out of school right away, immediately, put him in the UNC Cancer Center, where they began to, for 6 straight months, he had 72 rounds of radiation, 3 surgeries, 8 rounds of chemotherapy, popped up 6 months later as if hardly anything happened, but he didn't look the same. And he popped up, went back to school, graduated with honors on time, he was homecoming king. The girl who was his secret girlfriend was the homecoming queen. They got married. It's just a Cinderella story. And then they planned to get married. He gets a great job as an analyst. He's driving a great car. He's the king of the king of the hill, and living the big life. And then right before they were getting engaged, I took him at 8 a.m. one morning to pick up his engagement ring, a beautiful ring, and we pick it up. And that day he goes into his absolute final medical treatment, and he finds out that, this was his last one after 18 months of battling this cancer. They said, this is your final test. Why don't we just do a quick lung check? Because he finished all the surgeries and radiation with 20/20 vision. Every medical doctor said that's absolutely 100% insanely impossible.
Especially with it around his optic nerves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They said, you may go blind. You will lose partial eyesight. You will. And he comes out with 20/20 vision. So we're thinking, God did a miracle. This is amazing. And God did do a miracle. But then the next 18 months, he starts to have some small symptoms, this and that. So he goes into his final checkup, and they found it in his lungs. It had metastasized. They got married about 2 months later. They got married. And then a few months after that, he dies. 30 years old.
Terrible.
Somebody once told me, and there's nothing I could say that would ease the pain of a loss of a child, because we're not supposed to outlive our children.
Absolutely.
It said, when we're born, we start our journey on how to learn how to live. When we're born trying to learn how to live. When we're here, we try to master that. Those that are taken early reach their goal. So it sounds like, from what you're telling me about your son, is he learned how to live. Like, he got it.
He did.
He got it.
It was like he lived a full life at the age of 30. It was complete in a sense. Now for us, it's C.S. Lewis calls it, he says when you lose a loved one, it's like an amputation. He says you always miss what you don't have, but you keep on going. You just keep going.
That had to test your faith.
Oh, it shook me to the core. I mean, the pain, and you know what's good about that is I'll never forget the pain. I'll never forget sitting in a McAllister's deli in Tulsa, Oklahoma, watching all these happy people around me, and I just think, I just found out my son has terminal cancer. I'm just sitting there, just looking at this, and it was. I mean,
how do you even grasp that?
Yeah. I mean, the advantage I had is that my mind was fairly renewed from what I every day I try to read the Bible and see, what does God think? What does he feel? What does he think? What does he say? And that getting into me became an antiviral power. It became an antibody. And so it at a layer of me, not my emotions, but my spirit was strong. And I stayed close to God, knowing that he did not cause this, but he's going to use it. And like toward the end of his death, now there's no human being that could ever replace Jordan. He's just an incredible kid. And everybody who knows him, anyone who's listened to this who remembered him, know that he was just so kind. I don't think he ever one time, his wife said, he's never, ever had a cuss word. Now, I'm sorry for your viewers to know that he didn't learn that from me. He didn't learn it from you guys either.
Yeah, I was going to say he's never been on a suffering podcast.
No, that's true.
Right.
But was there, looking back on it now, how many years ago did he pass?
It was in 2014, March 20th, 2014.
Having some distance from it, do you see, and when I'm looking at something even as horrible as that, I'm trying to look for the purpose. I'm really, really trying to look for the purpose. Do you think there's any purpose to extract from that?
Well, there is, and that is a few things. I mean, the reality is life is short for all of us. Let's not kid ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know, everyone.
Everybody has an expiration date.
One of my dearest friends died today.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
It was a bummer. Yeah, I was in Queens when I got the news. Dear friend, Dr. Steve Green, COVID battle. I got his call today, and his wife said, I want you to know that Steve right now is in heaven, and he's looking for Jordan. That's my son. He was Jordan's mentor.
Really?
This happened today.
You know, I look at that as the death of my grandfather, who was 22 when I died. And I'm grateful. I look back, and here's my purpose. Here's the purpose in the loss of the greatest man that I ever knew. I got to spend 22 years.
Yeah, there you go.
With this incredible guy who taught me everything about how to be a man. Some people don't get that opportunity. I better be grateful for those 22 years.
Well said.
Yeah.
A lot of people, we're always complaining, looking for something else when we just have to accept what has God given us, and let's celebrate that. So I can really, truly celebrate his life. A couple things happened. Number one, my wife, Lynette, she helped me raise my 4 teenage sons, but she really longed to have children. She couldn't. And amazingly, she wrote in her journal one day, said, I'm going to have twin girls. The oldest will be named Victoria, the youngest Isabella. She flat out just wrote down something that would happen in the future. And it couldn't happen because Jordan was passing away and all these other things happened before. And our lives were just swept up with all the sort of the trauma and stuff like that. And right in the middle of that, we get a phone call from a birth mother who said, I heard that you might be interested in twins. And I thought I was having a boy, but I'm actually having twin girls. And can I interview you? So she interviewed us, and we didn't know what that meant, whatever. But Lynette got our adoption papers going and got them ready. And then we get this call from the girl again. She interviewed us, and then 9 days later, they were born. It was on December 25th. They were born outside of Bethlehem.
Christmas babies.
Right.
Right outside of Bethlehem.
Yeah, in a state.
Oh, my gosh.
So it became this like sign of life, of healing, and Jordan got to hold his twin sisters.
That's pretty cool.
For weeks before he passed. Held them as his body was just falling apart. His wife went on. She was sad, but she ended up marrying one of Jordan's best friends. And then there was
How do you think Jordan would feel about that?
I think he would probably be happy because he's healed. He's well.
Wasn't the best man at the wedding during his wedding, right? Because isn't that the best man's got to step in case the
it's sort of like that.
Yeah.
And that goes back into Scripture. Actually,
Yes.
There's a technical name for the next brother in the line should take over where that brother left off. It's a weird thing. I know. It's too much to comprehend right now, but.
So let's get into Miracles in Manhattan, because I do really enjoy this book because it's short little chapters. It's easy to read, and it's kind of like reading the Bible. You're not supposed to read the Bible all at one sitting.
True.
You got to read it in short little bursts, page a day, whatever it may be. And you can't read this all in one shot. It doesn't make sense to read it all in one shot. You read one little story, one little vignette, and then you reflect on it.
Yeah.
Like, wow, well, this happened because of this, and then because of this happened. How did this come about? Like, what was the genesis of the idea for this book?
Well, we saw so many miracles beginning in the Lambs Theater in Midtown Manhattan, and then our other congregations in New Jersey and some other places in Manhattan and other Philadelphia, different places. We just started compiling stories that people had either written to us or videoed, and we just began to get them put out in a written format. And we recognized that these are all people that claim to have had a miracle. I specifically compiled it where there'd be no preaching and no teaching, just stories. These are stories. If you don't believe it, you have to go talk to the person who's written about it. This is their story. And we launched it on 9/11, the 20-year anniversary of 9/11 that we just had a few months, 6 months ago. And it became just an instant hit. And people were just so happy to read these stories that out of the ashes, God has built a great church. Out of these ashes of 9/11, great things redemptively began to happen. And that's Jordan, my son Jordan, that's his story all the way. There's a foundation called Jordan Lewis Missions, jordanlewismissions.org.
We'll put that in our show notes. Drew, we got to get that in our show notes.
Thanks. And it's just a great foundation that was started by his peers at his university, Oral Roberts University. They launched it. People, whether you like them or not, but people like Joel Osteen and other people just said, this young man has a story. Let's just bless the foundation, because his brothers and his wife and his friends were all standing around looking, all these flowers being poured in. And somebody said, stop the flowers. This is ridiculous. Stop the flowers. Send something to Oral Roberts University Missions. And after 6 months or whatever, the chief legal counsel and the CFO called me and said, we need to give you this foundation because your church needs to cover this. We can't do anything with this money. The State Department won't allow us to send money to these nations where there's a lot of persecution and stuff. We can't even send our kids there. We can't send the money there. So they shifted that over. And from that point onward, we have built 220 some water wells or pumps or wells. We have fed hundreds of thousands of people. There have been a Bible translated into Tanzania, where they had no Bible. They now have a Bible. They have the Gospel of Luke and about 20 other books of the Bible translated into their heart language. There's so many positive things, hospitals and properties. And now we just bought a building in Pakistan, right there, one of the most arid and difficult places in the world where they're persecuting and killing people. I mean, so many sad things that are happening in all of the nations, including America. But this is targeting people that have no chance ever of hearing the gospel. A lot of people, wonder, like, what do you do for those who have never heard? Well, you find a creative way to get the gospel into their hands. And so all this stuff came as a result of Jordan's situation. Likewise, back to the book.
Before you move on to the book,
Yeah.
Something just occurred to me. I asked the question, like, so I'm just going to start a church. You started a church out of the ashes of 9/11, right?
Yeah.
All these great things happened out of the ashes of Jordan, and now I get it. Now I understand it. That's an amazing thing. Why would you start a church? Most people, well, there's some less than ethical people that would start a church for nefarious reasons, for financial reasons.
Show me the finance. I don't know what you're talking about.
Jimmy Swaggart.
not the
We'll
case
talk
here.
to Jimmy Swaggart.
Right, Swaggart and
Yeah,
Baker. Right,
yeah,
of course.
but,
we
you
don't
know-
have water slides in our property.
Right. But
By the way, where's our property?
It
No.
makes sense now. This great foundation was built out of your son Jordan's ashes, and he's able to rise again and build a community and help people further the same way that every nation's has done. It's build a church out of the ashes, build a community. I really applaud you for that. Where can we get Miracles in Manhattan?
Sure. You can go to miraclesinmanhattan.org.
Okay.
I believe it's in the back of the book here. Oh, you could go to Amazon.
Go to Amazon?
Hey, just make it easy. Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
We'll also put another link to the show notes and that. And is there anything else that you want to throw out there? Like, I know you're on Instagram because we connect through Instagram.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch you, bro. You really have a lot going on, and I love it. Your story,
Yeah.
your story is incredible. Yeah, I encourage everyone to listen to your story. It's really amazing. Your journey, all of that.
And yet, as many times as
Episode 9.
That's Mike's story. That's Mike's story. So every time I go out and talk about it, I'm in front of the camera. I'll tell this story, and there's a point in it where my redemption starts. But the worst time was when I gave my testimony in front of the congregation. It's 100 people. It's not a big
You're
deal.
the one in Jersey, right?
The one in New Jersey. The one
Awesome.
I got called on the spot. And
How'd
said,
you feel?
Nervous. I think, you know what? We'd just gotten back from a 20-hour flight back from Florida because it was snowing up here. And I went out snow plowing because I had customers I had to go take care of. I went out snow plowing and I got to church and I gave my testimony.
Oh,
I was deathly afraid.
you know who hates to be pulled up at the last minute and without preparation is that Adam Burt hates that.
I'll have to remember that.
Yeah.
We got to call him on the
he
spot one
hates
day
it.
then.
I'm going to call him after this is done. And I said, I invited you here to sit in, but you didn't.
Adam
want to.
goes to bed at 8:00 with his milk and cookies. Actually, it's his milk and red wine mixed in, I guess. But what?
It's tough to dip those cookies in straight red wine.
One of my dearest friends is Pastor Adam, and I really do enjoy the way you speak, and I follow what you say, and I think you're an amazing person, you're an amazing orator, you got an amazing message, all across the board. But we are coming to the end of this thing here, and you've gone through different suffering in your life, from the suffering of building a church, which I can't imagine, from losing your child to divorce to the way you were raised, to your relationship with your father. What do you think it's taught you?
I think it's taught me to endure, to overcome, to believe that God's not finished yet.
Patience and perseverance.
Yeah, and without faith and patience, we can't inherit what God has for us.
Well, that's the problem people run into. They want immediate results. They don't have the patience to look for the results. That's why people stay in those holes for that long.
And this is, if you would have been here during my opening, you would have heard me say that very same thing. But he can't sit on my openings anymore because all he does is try to make me laugh.
No, I don't try to. He just screws up, and I just sit there and go.
It's like the Carol Burnett show.
Oh,
Really? It's like the Carol Burnett show. Tim Conway and Harvey Korman trying to make each other laugh. It's really bad.
Too much.
Pastor Ron, I do appreciate this. This has been a great episode.
Absolutely.
I don't even know how we're going to timestamp this one, Drew, because there's just way too much to go through on this one. There's just all these little nuggets of information.
Tell you what I'll do. If you come and visit us when we go in our broadcast deal, you come in and see us. I'll come back. We'll just help each other along the journey.
Well, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's what Mike and I do. That's what we do now. You need us? Okay, we're there.
I love that.
We tell people all the time, once you're on our podcast, you become part of our family. And we're there for everybody in our family.
Well, where's my mug and my cigar to prove it?
We do have cigars.
Just kidding.
Well,
Kidding.
thank you very much for coming in. And that's going to do it for this episode of The Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of a Pastor. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned today. Illiteracy equals ignorance. Forgiveness turns suffering around. Suffering has a shelf life. Learn to forgive yourself. But most importantly, endure, overcome, and believe. And that's going to do it for this episode of The Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of a Pastor. Follow Pastor Ron Lewis at Pastor Ron Lewis.
At Pastor Ron Lewis.
Follow Mike at Mike_Failace. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. Of course, follow The Suffering Podcast. And we will see you next time on The Suffering Podcast. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and ring the bell.